So today's video is going to be about Fantasia, the first one that was released in 1940. It is the third feature-length animated movie that was done by the Walt Disney Company. And it's one of the first more innovative ones that they did. Unfortunately, like with Pinocchio in the same year, it was unfortunately affected, its success was unfortunately affected by World War II. America was not yet in the war, but because of so much of the European market being, not accessible at the time, unfortunately, that meant that the film, unfortunately, wasn't able to get any overseas revenue. But as you may be familiar with when it comes to Fantasia, there are lots of dancing flowers and animals throughout the show. So I've added flowers to my motif. We'll see how they stay. Mainly how much the dog will like to get up and move later. We'll see. And of course, the whole Fantasia itself is the concept of let's take classical music and interpret it into either kind of what the theme of the song is anyway, if it is, a type of theme that can be, translated into a visual, as in if it tells a definite story, or if it is a kind that does not tell a definite story but evokes different images. And the beginning of the movie starts with an announcer explaining the differences between the three. And the first one that they do have is Takata and Fugue in D minor, which is just, I believe that Takata and Fugue is just a different way of saying a certain type of music, but I can't remember exactly what it is. It is the first one that they use. And it is more the kind where it's like it evokes different images. Parts of it originally just start with them filming the orchestra as it plays and then overlaying with different colors, and then it slowly moves into more abstract images, what looks like, the violin bows going back and forth, or other, just different colors and textures that seem to be evoked by the music. And yes, I know I'm not the first one to say it. For all we know, some of the Disney artists may have been having a little bit of fun at times, but that's also not surprising, or they were just extremely creative people. And most of the music actually I believe all the music for the movie itself is performed by a specific orchestra. I think it was the New York Philharmonic Orchestra, I believe so, conducted by Stokowski. And they, so the first one is Takata and Fugue, goes back and forth, lots of different images that are evoked, not really anything concrete, but it is a nice, series of musics and, series of images that they tend to show throughout the course of the show. And then from there, we of course move into the Nutcracker Suite, which is, by Stokowski, Stokowski. From the classical ballet, the Nutcracker, and those ones is more, that's more kind of the more iconic stuff, lots of the dancing flowers and the fish and the fairies flying their way throughout the whole sequence, moving from one area to the next. There's the dancing mushrooms, different ones that evoke different parts of the suite. And but there's no actual Nutcracker that pops up in it, which is cute. And then we have the dance of the sugar plum fairies, of course, works its way in there, and many others. Goldfish are in there, which I think the goldfish that they use in it, or at least the main one, I think Walt Disney made a reference of, she's Cleo from Pinocchio's undersea cousin. I'm okay with this. Doesn't matter if I'm okay with it. It's what they wanted to do. But I like that concept. And I just think that the way that they design the different animals and the fish and the flowers and everything that they use throughout it are quite beautiful. Um, and the Nutcracker Suite, we're all fairly familiar with the Nutcracker Suite and the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies. And the sequence itself starts with these fairies going around at dawn and setting up the dewdrops all over this meadow, and then it shifts into spring with making the flowers bloom, and then it shifts into fall with then turning the leaves gold and then the leaves falling, and then it shifts into winter with them dancing on snowflakes and making turning the lake and the pond into ice and them skating around on it, which is just so pretty. The fairies themselves are not very overly drawn creatures. They're just little sprites that are very they're cute, possibly predecessors to Tinkerbell from later on in Pinocchio, but they're cute. Maybe they're some of the underlings or so from the Blue Fairy from Pinocchio. So they work their way around and they dance and they lots of different very beautiful images that they use for that. The original concept for Fantasia itself was it's supposed to be an ever-changing and evolving concert piece. The concert feature, the concert piece was just actually what it was originally called. And it ended up becoming called Fantasia a little bit later on. I do not remember the exact origin of where that name came from. But what it was supposed to be was that every year or 2 years, it was supposed to be that they would come out with some old sequences and some new sequences. This is later kind of more come to fruition in regards to Fantasia 2000, where they still have the Sorcerer's Apprentices in there, but all of the other things that they use in Fantasia 2000 are new. And from the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies and the Nutcracker Fairy has ballet-esque moves that they have lots of flowers doing. We watch the transition into fall, and they're very beautiful for the way that they have the flowers interact and do some of the dances that you're very familiar with when it comes from the Nutcracker Suite. And then we move on to the third piece, which is the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Which was an original piece that I believe was composed for this, where they wanted to show the story of this, it's Mickey. Mickey as a sorcerer's apprentice, learning the concept of, don't use the spell until you know how to stop the spell is basically what it's trying to teach you. Don't make a mess until you know how to clean it up. And, so they show Mickey there as the apprentice, and and they show the wizard, Yensid, which is of course Disney spelled backwards. And throughout the episode, the little sequence is very beautifully drawn, of course. Mickey, is a little lazy little mouse at the time, and he steals his master's hat. When the master goes off to go to sleep, he steals his master's hat and enchants a broom to, carry the water for him and fill the cauldron for him. And that doesn't go well. He sets it up and he thinks it's going fine, so he takes a nap. And then we get the beautiful sequences of Mickey directing the stars and the waves, and him being the sorcerer supreme. Probably not. I highly doubt Doctor Strange was around at that point in time. Actually, I'm very certain that he was not. But the concept of him having him being this very powerful sorcerer and commanding the stars and the moon and the heavens and the water and the earth and everything, and then he wakes up and he realizes, the broom's gonna flood the building, so tries to stop it, doesn't work, grabs an axe, chops the broom into tiny little pieces, thinking that solves his problem. It doesn't. And then all the little pieces, of course, we know this, turn into full-fledged brooms. And they begin to bring in more and more water, filling up the cauldron even more and flooding the room even more. And Mickey's trying in vain to try to stop this, and that doesn't go well for him. And then out pops Yensid. and he uses his power, you know, enfolds the water in on itself, makes all the different brooms vanish, has the original broom back, makes all the water go away. And then it basically looks at Mickey, who sheepishly takes the hat off his head, gives it back, and yeah. Uh, yeah. Then, the master sends him on his way back to getting your cauldron full, because, you can't do the advanced stuff if you can't do the basic stuff. And, they're just very, I mean, like, all the sequences in Fantasia are beautiful, in my opinion. Same thing with Fantasia 2000, and Sorcerer's Apprentice is reused there. And they have the cute little moment after the Sorcerer's Apprentice where Mickey interacts with the orchestra conductor, and that's just adorable. So it's just like, you got to shake hands with Mickey Mouse, even if it is in silhouette, but it's still cute. So it's, something that he could always tell his kids and his grandkids about later on, I guess. And then we move on to the Rite of Spring, which is kind of the concept of Disney, with as much scientific knowledge as what they had at the time. And remember, this is in 1940, so this is 80 years ago. So much of what they learned up to that point about the history of the Earth, how it formed, and dinosaurs and everything like that. Of course, they take a few liberties in regards to which dinosaurs are around at the same time, because they have a Stegosaurus and a Tyrannosaurus Rex around at the same time. Off the top of my head, I do not remember if those two creatures are specifically around at the same in the same time frame or not. Right off the top of my head, I do not remember that. If they are, then okay, they got that right. If they're not, then creative liberties a bit. But they try to do their best to show kind of this, how our galaxy formed, and then how our planet formed, and then how it got to the point where life can now live on the planet, and little amoebas slowly getting bigger and bigger, turning into fish, turning into the aquatic dinosaur, or the aquatic ancient creatures that then eventually turns into the dinosaurs. And then of course we get to the climax of it, which shows the Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Stegosaurus fighting, and the Tyrannosaurus Rex winning. My dad has mentioned that he remembers watching this segment in science class in school when he was growing up. Not my dad grew up in the 50s and 60s, so it's it's like it was a few years later, but still, given what they still knew about, or what they had yet to learn up to that point about, oh, this is how things actually developed and such. But for what it showed, it was fairly well done. And the music that they use for it is the Rite of Spring. The music itself is very beautiful in the beginning, and it gets very big and bombastic near the during the battle sequence. And and they show all these lots of other dinosaurs. There's Pachycephalosaurus are in there, and Triceratops are in there, and Stegosaurus, as I said, and Tyrannosaurus Rex, of course, and Dimetrodon are in there, and so it's a very nice way of showing kind of just prehistoric Earth, back with the dinosaurs and everything, and I think they do a beautiful job with it. And as I said, we get the battle between the two dinosaurs, and then after that, in the original feature, and they still have this in the DVD, there is a short intermission. It was in the theater. It was a rather long piece at this point in time, so like, intermissions in movies wasn't all that uncommon. If you actually watch Sound of Music, which came out, quite a bit later, but it's a long enough movie that they have like an intermission in it because it's based on a play. At this point they had a intermission in the movie, and they go off, and then when they come back, they have this little interaction that the kind of announcer, presenter of the movie has with the soundtrack. And the soundtrack is just kind of this little line that pops onto the screen. It's very shy, and he asks it to make different sounds. We have like an oboe that we think we have it makes. We have like a trumpet, I think it does. It does like a harp, a violin, lots of different, lots of very beautiful sounds, and it makes all these different images that kind of evoke, what that sound kind of sounds like. And admittedly, like the much more lower horn ones, one of them looks quite a bit like a whoopee cushion. And I just find that hilarious. We use a flute, a trumpet, a bassoon, drums, snare drums, cymbals, and triangle, which is adorable. And it gives, the soundtrack is kind of, it's illustrating a little bit of, like the soundtrack has its own personality. And I think that that's very sweet. And then, of course, we move on to the Pastoral Symphony, which is one of the ones that more does tell a direct story. And in the Pastoral Symphony, it is the motif of ancient Greece, where there are centaurs and a family of Pegasi, or Pegasus, depending on which way you want to put it, the gods of Olympus, fauns, fauns, cupids, unicorns, and other legendary creatures are there as well. And it's, all of them interacting with each other. And it, it starts off, we see this family of Pegasi, flying around, interacting with each other. There's the father, there's the mother, and then there's, I think there's like 4 little babies, and, them flying around, and, they swim like swans because they have wings, and they're just adorable. I unfortunately do not have any stuffed Pegasus, or I would have brought them out. I have like tiny ones, but they're not big enough to see on screen, so I'm not going to worry about those. And then we move into where we have all these little cupids going around, and we have all these different centaurettes that we get introduced to. And, there are lots of different beautiful ones. There's this blue one here, which is kind of the one that I've seen the most fan art of. She has, this beautiful long blue hair and this beautiful tail that, it's like flowers all the way woven through it. And then there's this other blue one, this little shy kind of blue one. Much more shy, very cute with the pigtails and everything. Blonde little pigtails. And they're both very cute, and like all the different centaurettes that they show throughout the movie are all or throughout the course of the segment, are all very beautiful in their own right. And then like, these cupids, and then the cupids are the ones that spot the centaurs, and it's like, oh, well, let's set up the centaurs with the centaurettes. And so they get all the centaurettes all beautified, beautiful different hairstyles. One of them wears 2 doves on her head, from what I remember. But, we get the centaur. It's all very beautiful, and then they, each get paired off with a centaur that they kind of give them all very come hither looks. And so, oh, why don't you come over here and see us and everything? We get them doing lots of different cute things. The blue one with the long blue hair ends up with this centaur. And then we have the little blonde-haired one kind of off on her own. And the cupids see this, and they see this other male centaur that is off on his own. And they're like, put them together. And they, they lead them together. And it's this very cute thing. And they lead together, and, the 2 of them end up together. And it's very cute. And like all the different centaurs and centaurettes end up getting paired off. And then it shifts into more of a party, and it shifts into much more of a party that has Bacchus, the god of wine, riding in on his horned donkey. I kid you not, this is the donkey's named Jockus. Riding in on a donkey, and they're, all the centaurs and the fauns that they see are making wine. So they're crushing grapes and making juice and wine and everything for Bacchus to drink, and for them all to drink and have this big party. And it's just more having fun and everything. And then partway through the party, Zeus decides, oh, now's the perfect time for me to start throwing all these thunderbolts that I got. ugh. Starts to release thunderbolts, makes a giant rainstorm, makes everyone have to run and hide. And then, Zeus gets bored after a little while, and he's like, I'm done. I'm going to take a nap. Yes, Zeus, go. Take a nap. And, Zeus takes his nap, and then, and then across the sky, because, after you have a rainstorm, you have a rainbow, you have Iris, who is a goddess of rainbows in Greek mythology. She flies across the sky, leaving this beautiful rainbow behind her, and brings out everyone from inside, from where they were hiding during the storm. All the little baby little Pegasuses and Cupids and such, start flying around the rainbow and sliding down the rainbow because they're a tangible thing apparently. At least if they're made by Iris, they're a tangible thing. Okay, slide down the rainbow. And then it shifts into night, and we get this great shot of Artemis, of goddess Artemis, using the crescent moon as her bow, and she shoots an arrow that turns into a shooting star, and that's just the way that the way that it ends. It's a cute little way to end the story. And it shifts here and there through some other images that they use to show all the other everybody's going to sleep, so they show all the little Cupids falling asleep, and they show all the little Pegasuses getting tucked into their nest by their mother, because Pegasus live in nests because they're flying horses. I don't know if it ever says in mythology where Pegasus sleeps. I could be wrong. But so they work through that, and it's very I think it's my favorite sequence in either Fantasia movie, or at the very least, the original Fantasia. It is my favorite sequence in the original Fantasia. And then we move into the Dance of the Hours, which is the one with all the different dancing animals. Dancing elephants, dancing hippos, dancing crocodiles, dancing ostriches. The ostriches are first, and the Dance of the Hours is a concept of 1 hour, the hours of the day turn into the next, and the ostriches are the morning hours, and then we have and of course the ostriches are the black and white plumage, which nowadays we know kind of is the ones that have the black and white feathers are the males. So it wasn't common knowledge at the time, unless you're a zoologist, that all these ostriches are males. But the brown female colors probably wouldn't have worked as well. But they still wanted to use the ostriches. So they have the ostriches going around and doing lots of different ballet moves and everything, and then it shifts into these hippos. And the hippos dance around. There's like one main hippo, and she's kind of, I guess, the leader of the hippos. I guess they're the afternoon hours, and they get they're all dancing around and having fun, and then the main hippo gets tired, so she lays down, and then out come the elephants, which represent sunset hours. The sunset hours, and they dance around and everything, like they will lots of different bubbles that they're dancing around with from their trunks, and at one point they make so many bubbles that it raises up the couch bed type thing that the main hippo is sitting on, and then they all scatter, and then as it slowly, all the bubbles pop, and it slowly lowers itself back down to the ground because gravity. We make the shift into the night hours, which is where the crocodiles come in. And I kid you not, the original, male alligator that's the main male alligator that we see dancing with the main hippo, is called Ben Alligator. They have all these different crocodiles show up, and they surround the hippo who's asleep, And then this other crocodile shows, this other alligator shows up. Alligators, not crocodiles. Crocodiles would have worked better considering the fact that hippos and crocodiles at least live in the same environment in the Nile in Africa, but they went with alligators instead. But okay. And he scares off the other alligators, and then he falls in love with the hippo, with the main hippo. And she wakes up, and he starts chasing her around and kind of flirting with her, and they dance, and he keeps chasing her around the area, around the palace where they live, where this is all taking place in. And he's a strong alligator. I'll give him that, because at some point he lifts her up. And then it's like, you have the ability to lift a hippo. Okay, you have my attention. Yeah. And then all the other animals start coming out, or they're dragged out by the other alligators, that they start all dancing and singing, and well, not singing, but they start dancing and everything. And the other animals are, of course, kind of scared of the alligators. Not that I blame them. Ostrich very easily have his neck snapped by an alligator. And so they're all dancing and everything. And then at the end of the scene, it pulls all the way out, and then you see the castle collapses in on itself. The palace collapsing in on itself, and that's just adorable. And then we move into the final sequence, which was described as a concept of the profane versus the sacred, because it is Night on Bald Mountain turning into Ave Maria. And we so it's all of these, because it's based on because the concept comes from Night on Bald Mountain is a concept of, we're gonna have Chernobog, which is the representation of the devil, and he's on top of this mountain. And I'll give him this. He's a rather intimidating figure. It's a giant gargoyle-esque type thing. Giant black horns. Looks very strong. Has these huge wings, and he summons all of these different, demons and ghosts and skeletons and vultures and ravens and imps and witches and harpies and all these other just thought to be evil creatures, to be part of this kind of cabal party thing that they're having. And it's supposed to be a concept of All Hallows Eve, Halloween, when all these ghosts and everything have the ability to wander the earth, and they do. And so we got all these different imagery of there's like so many different creatures listed in this thing, or that show up in this bit, and it's like it can be quite scary. I'll give them that. They did quite a good job of that. And what happened was, and then at the end of it, it's as dawn comes and the bells start ringing, because the Night of Bald Mountain ends, and then we start hearing the dong of the bells, and at each dong, it scares the demon Chernobog and the other demons more and more, and they slowly slink back into the depths of hell from whence they came. And Chernobog, he uses his wings to close in around himself, so he's safe from the light, from the holy magic, the holy power, I guess would be the better way of putting it. And what happens is we slowly get this transition of, into this dark forest that slowly becomes more and more bright, and we start hearing the singing of this choir. And it's really the only words we hear throughout the movie that's not spoken by the either the conductor or by the host. And they're singing. There's beautiful choir. I believe it's like 40 people was in the choir that they used, and it's them singing Ave Maria. And what happens is we see these. They're probably like villagers or townsfolk or so from whatever town Bald Mountain is near, and they're all walking through this forest at night, and they all have these candles, probably candles or lanterns, one of the two. They're slowly working their way through the woods, and we watch them. We go over this bridge, so we get the lights reflected in the water. We work their way through these dark woods that slowly become more and more bright, because it's dawn is coming, sunrise is happening, and we get the very it is quite obvious because Ave Maria is a very religious song. It is very religious connotations that they're pulling off in this. Very beautifully done, and the forest seems to change into a cathedral, and we get these beautiful stained glass looking windows, or imagery that is evoked in it, and it's very beautifully done. And so they go through that, and I just find that fun. I just find the sequence beautiful for what they do with that, because it goes from this all these scary creatures and everything into this place where you're supposed to feel safe. And I know that not everybody always feels safe in a church, but even if you may not necessarily be religious, you can still appreciate the beauty of the inside of cathedrals or chapels or churches or whichever one you want to go through, or mosques or synagogues or other temples. There's you can still appreciate that beauty that's in there, and that imagery does have a powerful effect. That imagery does have a powerful effect, and in a lot of different cultures, the concept of whatever this religion is able to kind of scare off these horrible demons, which is, I think, a very good. The dog keeps making noises. Yes. Would you like to comment? Apparently he doesn't. So we work through that and everything, and I just think that that's beautifully done. And that's just how Fantasia ends. And then we move into where Fantasia has been represented in other media. The brooms from Fantasia are at the House of Mouse. They are actually the cleaning staff at the House of Mouse. Mickey seems to have gained quite a bit more control over them over the years. Or at the very least, Yen Sid has ordered them to obey Mickey. Because we see Yen Sid sitting in sitting in the House of Mouse every now and then. Just usually results in him glaring at Mickey every time Mickey comes along. It's just funny. I don't think any of the fairies or anything shows up. I know Chernobog has showed up in a few different episodes. The main one being Pete. Always wants to find a way to shut down the House of Mouse. It's like, it's making you money. Why would you want to shut it down? Because he owns the building and he keeps trying to find a reason to shut them down. But he breaks the heater, so it's it's like it's way too hot in there. It's way too hot in the building, and the only guest that they have in there is Hades. And because Hades is like, oh well, this feels perfectly fine. I don't know why everybody's having a problem with this, because Hades is from hell, so of course he's perfectly fine with fire. And he so they have to find out with this. Well, what can we do to entertain Hades so he stays, or we get shut down? And what happens is they're like, because okay, so in the House of Mouse, as I said, I am gonna do a whole video at least about the House of Mouse, because I loved it and I just think it's such a great concept. In the basement of the House of Mouse, they have this giant storage room of like all this other, it's like huge magic and props and costumes and everything that's it's like all of Disney history is down in that basement. And what happens is they find Chernobog, and they kind of have him and a bunch of the other like his ghostly servants and vultures and imps and everything do kind of the Night on Bald Mountain sequence on stage for Hades. And he's like, they brought out the old routine, I like it. And so it's just like funny thing that they do with that. As I said, the brooms are there as the cleaning staff throughout the course of the series, and they're there. They don't really do too much besides that. And then we get into Kingdom Hearts, and in Kingdom Hearts, we are introduced to Yen Sid. I do not remember exactly how early on we are introduced to Yen Sid. He's at least, I think he's introduced. At least by Kingdom Hearts 2, I know that because you run around in the Symphony of Sorcery, which is kind of his world, in Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. And so that would be Kingdom Hearts 3D. And you run around there, and there's also a world called the Timeless River World from Kingdom Hearts 2, which is featured as a period of Mickey's past. Because Mickey was trained by Ian Sid, so it's a reference to the Sorcerer's Apprentice, to be a Keyblade Master, because Ian Sid is a former Keyblade Master. He's a retired Keyblade Master. And so, because he was a Keymaster alongside Xehanort, and some of the other older masters over the years. He was he's retired, and he's the one that trained Mickey, and he still has his pointy blue hat and everything. And what happens is you have to go to Yensid's tower in Kingdom Hearts 2. He's kind of the starting off point in Kingdom Hearts 2. Or so once you reach that point in games. He is there, and he kind of helps give you some more equipment, and then at some point you have to return, and you have to fight your way through the Symphony of Sorcery, which is based on the different worlds from Fantasia, because there's like a Pastoral Symphony area. There's kind of they don't have a Rite of Spring area, so you don't fight dinosaurs, unfortunately. That would have been fun. I'm gonna go fight dinosaurs. Okay. But you kind of work your way through the Pastoral Symphony area. You work your way through some of the other areas in regards to some of the stuff from like the Nutcracker Suite areas are in there. And the boss for Kingdom Hearts for that area is Chernobog, so you have to fight Chernobog. And so I was like, yeah, let's fight the giant demon thing. Great idea. I don't remember how many times I had to fight him before I beat him. I don't remember if I beat him on the first try or not. I usually ended up tending to be a bit overpowered by the time I got to certain villains, but it worked better for me that way. Also, I just like to explore and that. And so, we interact with Yensid a fair amount throughout the rest of the series, as flashbacks with Mickey of him learning about being a Keyblade Master, and a few other things happen. And such, like he's there, he's helpful. I think at the end of it, Yensid is at the Disney Castle, where they're doing this huge celebration, but everything's fixed. Kingdom Hearts, we don't have to worry about this. The Heartless are gone. Xehanort's been defeated. We can all relax. And he's at the Disney Castle with Mickey and Minnie and Donald and Daisy and Goofy and such. And then we get into the Once Upon a Time territory, which is not as he's not Yensid himself is not really involved in Disney, or not really involved in Once Upon a Time. Mickey, the Sorcerer's Apprentice concept is there, and the concept of the Starry Hat is there, because it's the Sorcerer's Apprentice job to find the new author who's supposed to write the stories that the fairy tales come from. Not interfere, just write them. And at one point, the first time that we are introduced to the Sorcerer's Apprentice is when Anna from Frozen has to interact with him, because she wants to find something that can help Elsa control her power better. And he's kind of the one that leads them into, he's rather he's not intricate, but he's there throughout part of that story for her. And then later on we see him more and more in flashbacks when we meet the author. And then later on we are introduced to this mansion in Storybrooke that appeared, I think, is when they come back from the Enchanted Forest the second time. And this new mansion is there, and Belle and Rumple go there for their honeymoon. And I'll get to that, but they do the big dance sequence with her in the beautiful golden dress, and him in the very nice blue suit and everything. But he figures out, oh, I don't know who had this mansion. It wasn't here before. Belle's just like, it must have come over with the last curse when we came back. And Rumple figures out, oh, this has a connection to the Sorcerer. And the Sorcerer is, this extremely powerful being. Again, we never see the Sorcerer in Once Upon a Time. But throughout all of Once Upon a Time, we see like little Mickey mini figurines, mostly in Mr. Gold's pawn shop, so they hold power. Yeah, and there's a princess character, of course, and he is at one point turned into a mouse by Rumpel, and then he gets turned back. He ends up kind of being more this sagely kind of advice giver to Henry near the end of partway through the series. He becomes more of like I'm going to give you advice on how to do this, better advice than you apparently gave the last guy. So you work through that, and I like what they do with how they interact with that. The hat ends up being rather crucial in what some of the villains want to do, because the villains want to find the author, and so they can change their story so they can have happier endings, which just leads into a whole fiasco, and a lot of torture for certain characters, unfortunately. And so we get interactions with that, and they have the hat there, the starry hat, and it's a very powerful object, and certain things result in other things. This leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and consequences, which is one of the things that Once Upon a Time goes into a lot. There are consequences for certain actions, and that sometimes consequences can go back quite a ways. But that's neither here nor there for that. But so they do different varying beautiful things for that, for how they tie in Fantasia into Once Upon a Time. And I like that. And that's just basically where that goes. And I will talk about Fantasia 2000 when I get down to that, which obviously came out in 1985. No, it came out in 2000. Let's see, when did Fantasia 2000 come out? 2000. If you can't figure out that, so they throw in different references to that every now and then in different media, here and there. But they're cute. They're cute with what they do. So that's basically the end of that. I still have the flowers. Well, I highly doubt they'll be staying around too long, since they're both in glass faces, and I don't want them getting knocked over. So I thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye. What you're going to see are designs and pictures and stories that music inspired in the minds and imaginations of a group of artists. In other words, these are not going to be the interpretations of trained musicians, which I think is all to the good.